Okay, so we've been listening to ballistics testimony, and obviously the defense is trying to show that there wasn't gunfire on the south side of the building where
Right.
Adrian Gonzales arrived, and there was all this discussion about the sound of gunfire. Talk to me about when you do have gunfire. Does it sometimes feel like it's in a different place than it actually is in a case like that?
Absolutely. It depends on the environment. Ricochets, echoes around, and so sometimes it's actually hard to locate it, just based on the sound alone. So that can be tricky depending on the wind and a whole lot of other things that are going on. You definitely have a difficult time sometimes understanding where it's actually coming from, and it's good to have multiple people, from an officer standpoint, to help you triangulate that and understand where it is.
So when Adrian Gonzales arrives on scene, when you arrive on scene at a situation like this, talk to me about the difficulties that a law enforcement officer would have of ascertaining where it's coming from, especially if he doesn't have. Okay, let's assume he didn't have line of sight.
Yes.
Assume he never sees the shooter.
Yeah.
Let's assume that's the case.
Yeah, in that particular situation, we're relying on information coming into us from 911. So what does dispatch have? What information are they relaying? What are people who are calling in who hear the gun fire? Where do they say it's coming from? Do we have any witnesses that seen muzzle flash? Anything like that would give us some indication, some idea of where this gunfire might be, taking place. If we get on the scene and we can see physical evidence, that's one thing, and that is an indication where it might have come from at that particular point in time. But oftentimes it's a fluid situation. People are moving, so it's not an exact science in terms of hearing it and then we just knowing exactly where a person is, because they're mobile, they're moving, and where we think they might be at one particular point in time, they could have moved to a different location. So
I remember when we had the terrible events in downtown Dallas, and one of the issues in that case was they thought, because of the way that the building, the sound of that gunfire, the echoes, one point you could hear on the body cams in that case, the officers thought that there was a thinking that gunfire was coming from the parking garage.
Right.
But it wasn't.
Right.
And so there was a lot of confusion, which is why in that case there was some thought that maybe there was more than one shooter.
Right.
Right? And I think even in this case there was some thought at maybe one point, maybe they had more than one shooter here too. So it's like that. And let me say this: is rifle rounds more likely to cause that kind of effect?
Yeah, absolutely, because they're louder, and in the environment that they're in, there could be the echo. There could be just a lot of things that are influencing the sound. It bouncing off of buildings, as you indicated with the downtown Dallas situation. So those things can be tricky to maneuver. That's why we rely a lot on witness information, people calling in to help us triangulate that information, if you will, to try to identify where the shots are coming from. And that can be extremely difficult sometimes.
Well, for folks that have joined us just a little late, I want to explain. This is James Hawthorne. He's a retired law enforcement officer. He was the chief of the Cedar Hill Independent School District for 9 years, and
Correct.
He retired in May. And James and I have actually known each other for about 25 years, so we go way back. And James and I want to talk some more about, since we've had a lot of folks join us, just about the training that law enforcement goes through for these situations. How should an officer, when they arrive on the scene, they hear that dispatch recording, what should be their actions in that case? And let's start with they're by themselves.
Okay, they're by themselves. They arrive on the scene. You are initially taking a quick scan, trying to gather as much information as you can about what the incident is, any potential evidence that's going to give you some indication what we're dealing with. sizing up the location. You know, we call that an L-can in police work, right? We arrive on the location, we talk about the condition, the actions, and then the needs, immediate needs that we have at that situation that's going to give other first responders information that they need in order to properly respond to the situation. And so in that moment, we're relaying that information. Other first responders are coming to the scene. They're making decisions about where to set up staging for other officers to arrive and stage in a safe area. And then we want to get personnel to assist that one officer who's on the scene, who is the incident commander at that point in time, to get assistance, because in an active shooter situation, seconds count, time is working against us, and so we want to mobilize a team as quickly as possible to enter the scene, enter the location, and neutralize the shooter as quickly as possible. So that first responder, the information that he's given is critical, because it's giving us information as first responders where to go, where we need to, what type of equipment we might need. All of that information is critically vital. And again, time is working against us because this is an active shooter situation.
Because an active shooter, they have one goal, and of course, you know, Columbine was the sea change of realizing we can't handle these situations the way we've previously handled them.
Right.
In the training, is an officer, are they trained to wait for other officers to arrive before going in, or would there be a circumstance where you should just go on in?
It would depend on the circumstance, but I would think for the most part, you would want to wait on your backup officer or a team, if you will, so that you could safely go in and execute the strategy, the plan that we put together to try to locate the individual. There could be a circumstance that would exist where you would go in by yourself, but we wouldn't advise it, because you go in and you're killed as a result of that action. Now we don't have the ability to get information, the tactical information, the intelligence information that we need in order to effectively respond. So in our training, we're trained to wait to assemble a team. And we can't wait forever, obviously, you know, but there is some time that we give ourselves to quickly respond, to assemble a team. Most active shooter situations, if you look nationally, I think they're over with in 3 to 5 minutes. So we don't have a lot of time.
They don't go on 77 minutes.
They don't go on 77 minutes, no. And so we don't have a lot of time, and so getting there quickly, responding a team, you may or may not have all the equipment that you need, but you got to go.
Right.
And so we go with the equipment that we have, and that's why law enforcement has taken the position now. We try to equip the guys in the field with as much equipment as we can, in case they find themselves in that type of a situation and they're not having to rely on tactical equipment or people bringing equipment to the scene. They have that equipment readily available to them so that they can go in and execute as quickly as possible, to execute the plan.
Well, and that was part of the problem in this case, is they didn't have the bullet resistant shields, they didn't have the helmets and some of the heavy vests and things of that nature, but you can't always wait to have all the perfect equipment to go.
No, you can't, and we don't oftentimes find ourselves in situations where we have the luxury to wait for that, and oftentimes we have to respond and act even without the all the necessary or the correct equipment. You know, that's just part of the duty, if you will. And so we like to put officers in a position to have wins, and we want them to give them the equipment that they need. And law enforcement over the years has taken a lot of steps to equip officers with those types of equipment so that they have it readily available, you know, for them. But there could be some situations where you don't have it and you still have to act. Right. And the training that we go through now reinforces that. You may not have every piece of equipment that you need, but you still have the duty, you still have the obligation to act.
Right. And let's, you know, and I am very much hoping that they play some of these body cams today, because this will be, since we have James with us, this would be the perfect day for it. I mean, I know that as the prosecutors are not moving on my schedule,
Right.
but you and I, you watch some of the body cams, and you see, in the body cam, the main body cam that I've seen, where you see Adrian Gonzales is Sergeant Coronado, and you see Pete Arredondo enter, and you see them going down the hallway. Arredondo to the left, Gonzales to the right, which I'm again very much hoping they play today. And then you see the gunfire, and then it's like they go in to do what you're talking about, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then they don't.
Yeah, then they don't. And I have no explanation for that. It would have been preferable, what we would have liked to have seen from a law enforcement perspective, if they did initially retreat to put together a plan and then go back and execute the plan. We know this individual had fired rounds inside of the classroom, create some type of distraction technique, maybe at a window, maybe at some other point in the building that would draw his attention away, and then try to make the entry to go in and neutralize that individual. But we feel like that something should have taken place. They did retreat, but retreat and come back with a plan of action to go in, because at that point in time, I mean, it's fairly obvious that we have an active shooter in the building, and as I stated earlier, time is working against us. People could be injured, as we learned they were, and people bled to death inside of that room because law enforcement did not prioritize getting into that room and to stop the killing and to stop the dying.
Now, did you take the alert training since Uvalde?
Yes. And it's a pretty intensive, and by design. And again, all of the components that I've talked about go into that, and it really emphasizes the fact that you, as the first responder, the first officer on the scene, you are in command. You are in total control. You are assessing the scene. You're giving information to the other first responders about what is happening, so that they know where to go to you, so that we can assemble a team, and then those other first responders have a staging location so that they can gather themselves as well. And we can obviously get multiple teams inside the building, because we got one in maybe that's giving us intelligence information so that the other responders coming in know exactly where to go. And in a school environment, especially in a large school, if it's a high school, you have a lot of ground to cover. In this particular case, it's an elementary school, so it's not that much ground to cover. And they knew exactly where he was. And so it's not a situation where we were trying to find him. They knew exactly where he was. And so they could have put together a plan to get inside that classroom using distractions or whatever they needed to use in order to get in. And from what I learned, the classroom door was not locked, and so they would have been fairly easy to get inside the room without much effort.
Well, they were looking for a key forever and ever.
They're looking for a key forever, and obviously it turned out they didn't need a key.
Try the door.
Yes.
Try the door.
Right.
Can you get in? It's like, back when this originally happened, my son, you've met my son Aiden, and I just avoided watching a lot of this, right? Because he was about the age of these kids, and this stuff's too hard, right?
Yeah.
But as part of preparation for this trial, I watched a lot of the body cams and surveillance footage, and I for the life of me can't fathom kind of the why they did what they did. Was it fog of war? Is it cowardice? And I think that's some of what I think they're going to contend in this trial, that it was cowardice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and whether cowardice is criminal, I don't know. And I I think all officers put themselves in the position, and we're taught and we're trained, if it's your child, it's your loved one that's involved in that situation, treat each incident that we respond to it as if it's your family member that's involved. And how would you want the police to respond if it was your family member that was involved in that situation? And so I think we have an obligation to do the very best that we can to ensure the public that when we're faced with those types of situations, we have a duty to respond, and we will respond. And we will respond with the training that we've been provided, and go in and give the public confidence that when the police arrive on the scene, we're going to take care of business. We're going to do the things that we need to do in order to ensure the safety of everyone involved.
Do you think that the training improved after Uvalde?
I think there was, in some aspects, I do think so, because there was more of an emphasis placed on the fact that you have to have recognition that when you arrive on the scene as the first responder and you're the first person there, you have that scene. You're the incident commander. You're in control, and you have to take charge and direct troops in a manner that is going to expeditiously allow us to get inside the location and do what we need to do to keep everybody safe. And I know that there was emphasis put on that, but to me, in my opinion, there seemed to be a heavier emphasis placed on that. And maybe that's because in this particular situation, the people who should have been in control said they weren't in control, and people in responding said they didn't know who was in charge of the scene. And so there's a leadership failure there, and there's a failure to recognize that when you're there, you're the first responder, who's actually calling the shots and who's in control.